I mean, there again, it's about persona, isn't it? It's how we perceive those people. And I've just always seen him up until really Lethal Weapon as being a kind of a heavy kind of character.
At 79, Goldie Hawn is finally naming the actors she never forgave. The restaurant brawl that shocked Beverly Hills, the movie star who made filming a living hell, the comedy legend who turned predator, the husbands who became enemies, the cartoonist who tried to destroy her dreams, the action hero whose ego poisoned everything. Behind that $1 million smile were battles that would have broken anyone else. But Goldie survived it all, and now she's ready to tell the truth. So let's get into it. Chasen's restaurant in 1978 was where Hollywood royalty came to see and be seen. The dimly lit Beverly Hills establishment hosted power lunches and celebration dinners for the industry's biggest names. It was the last place anyone expected to witness a full-scale brawl between two of television's most beloved stars. Louise Lasser arrived that evening carrying invisible baggage. The Mary Hartman star had shot to fame playing television's most neurotic housewife, but success had come with a price. The pressure was crushing her, and everyone in Hollywood could see the cracks starting to show. What they didn't expect was for those cracks to explode into violence. When Lasser spotted Goldie across the elegant dining room, something inside her snapped. Maybe it was jealousy. Goldie's career seemed effortless while Louise fought for every opportunity. Maybe it was professional rivalry. Both women occupied the same comedy space, but only one was universally adored. Or maybe it was just the wrong night to encounter Goldie Hawn's perpetual cheerfulness. The confrontation started with stares and escalated to words. Other diners began to notice the tension building at Lasser's table. But Chasen's was used to celebrity drama. This felt different, though, more dangerous. When Goldie approached, probably trying to smooth over whatever had triggered Louise's hostility, she walked straight into an ambush. Louise Lasser erupted from her chair like a woman possessed. Without warning, she physically shoved Goldie backward, sending Hollywood's sweetheart crashing into another table. Crystal glasses shattered. Expensive dinnerware scattered across the marble floor. The entire restaurant fell silent, except for the sound of breaking china and shocked gasps. But Goldie Hawn didn't stay down. The Academy Award winner who had clawed her way from go-go dancer to movie star wasn't about to be humiliated in front of Hollywood's elite. She came back at Lasser with surprising fury, and suddenly Chasen's most exclusive dining room had become a battlefield. The two women grappled with vicious intensity. Carefully styled hair became disheveled. Designer gowns got torn and twisted. Other patrons scrambled away from their table as the fight threatened to engulf the entire restaurant. This wasn't a staged publicity stunt. This was raw, ugly, and absolutely real. Multiple staff members rushed to separate them, but the damage was done. By the time security restored order, both actresses were breathing heavily, their elegant outfits destroyed, their carefully maintained public images shattered. The aftermath was electric with tension and disbelief. Hollywood had just witnessed something unprecedented. In an industry built on image control and calculated publicity, two major stars had thrown down like common street fighters. The incident was immediately hushed up by studio publicists and restaurant management. But whispers spread through the industry like wildfire. For Goldie, the betrayal went deeper than the physical assault. She had approached Louise as a colleague, perhaps hoping to diffuse whatever professional tension existed between them. Instead, she'd been met with unprovoked violence from someone who should have understood the pressures they both faced as women in comedy. The fight became Hollywood legend, whispered about in boardrooms and green rooms for decades afterward. Those who witnessed it never forgot the sight of America's sweetheart trading blows with television's most famous housewife. But for Goldie, it was a harsh lesson about the dangers lurking beneath Hollywood's polished surface. Louise Lasser's career would soon spiral into personal troubles and very public meltdowns. But the restaurant brawl remained a defining moment for Goldie. The night she learned that in Hollywood, even your closest peers could become your most dangerous enemies without warning. The Chasen's incident taught Goldie that Hollywood friendships could turn violent without warning. But what she didn't expect was that sometimes the greatest danger would come from the men with the most power. The ones who controlled not just their own careers, but everyone else's fate on a film set. The set of Shampoo in 1975 should have been a creative paradise. Here was a film with serious artistic ambitions, a stellar cast, and one of Hollywood's most respected directors in Hal Ashby. Instead, it became a psychological battleground where Warren Beatty's ego transformed collaborative filmmaking into his personal dictatorship. Beatty arrived on set wearing multiple hats: star, producer, and co-writer. But what he really was a man drunk on power who saw every other person on the production as a subordinate in his personal empire. From day one, he made it clear that this was the Warren Beatty show, and everyone else was just along for the ride. The morning ritual became a masterclass in passive-aggressive control. Beatty would take his scenes first, demanding 8, 10, sometimes 12 takes until he achieved perfection. Only then would he graciously ask director Hal Ashby if perhaps he wanted to try something different. It was a performance of fake collaboration that fooled no one. Goldie watched this power play unfold with growing frustration. She'd earned her Oscar through professionalism and preparation, not by bullying her collaborators, but Beatty's control extended far beyond his own performances. As a producer and co-writer, he felt entitled to rewrite scenes on the spot, question camera angles, and second-guess every creative decision made by others. The chaos was deliberate. Beatty created confusion between the director, the writer, and himself, ensuring that every creative decision ultimately flowed through him. While Hal Ashby struggled to maintain directorial authority and co-writer Robert Towne fought to protect his script, Beatty positioned himself as the reasonable voice who could solve all problems. But his treatment of Goldie revealed the ugliest aspect of his control obsession. In their scenes together, he would make subtle adjustments that left her at a disadvantage. He'd position himself in the best lighting while she struggled with shadows. He'd improvise dialogue that forced her to react rather than participate as an equal partner. Every choice was calculated to diminish her presence and elevate his own. The psychological warfare was exhausting and relentless. Goldie never knew which Warren Beatty would show up each day, the charming collaborator or the cold manipulator. His mood swings seemed designed to keep everyone off balance, never quite sure where they stood or what would set him off. During crucial scenes, Beatty would capture his perfect performance first, then suggest trying the scene one more time with completely different blocking and emotional choices. This left Goldie navigating scenes blind, forced to react to his changes while he maintained complete control of the dynamic. The breaking point came when Goldie realized that Beatty's constant frowning and apparent anxiety weren't signs of artistic stress. They were the expressions of a man frustrated that others dared to have opinions about his vision. He was uncomfortable whenever he couldn't completely control the creative process, and that discomfort poisoned the entire production. His behavior toward the women on set was particularly troubling. While he maintained a facade of respect for Julie Christie, his former lover, his treatment of Goldie suggested a man who viewed women as either trophies or obstacles to his artistic vision. When she refused to be intimidated by his producer power plays, he escalated his psychological pressure. The film's success couldn't mask the toxic environment Beatty had created. Cast and crew members spoke privately about the nightmare of working under his regime, but his box office power and industry connections protected him from consequences. This was simply the price of doing business with Warren Beatty. For Goldie, Shampoo became a masterclass in how unchecked power could corrupt the collaborative art of filmmaking. Beatty's need to dominate every aspect of production revealed a man so insecure about his own worth that he had to diminish everyone around him to feel successful. Years later, Hollywood would develop terms for what Warren Beatty practiced on that set: toxic workplace behavior, psychological manipulation, abuse of power. But in 1975, it was just considered the prerogative of successful men. Goldie endured it because she was a professional, but she never forgot the systematic way he turned creativity into warfare. The Warren Beatty experience taught Goldie that ego and talent often went hand in hand in Hollywood, and that sometimes the most celebrated artists could be the most dangerous to work with. But at least Beatty's cruelty was professional. What she encountered next was far more personal and deeply disturbing. London in 1970 was swinging with cultural revolution, and There's a Girl in My Soup seemed like the perfect project to capture that energy. Peter Sellers was at the height of his fame as Inspector Clouseau, and Goldie was riding high in her Oscar win. On paper, pairing the master of British comedy with America's newest sweetheart looked like box office gold. But Peter Sellers arrived on set carrying baggage that would poison the entire production. Behind his genius for character creation lurked a man whose personal life was a series of broken relationships, explosive feuds, and increasingly erratic behavior. He had a reputation for cruelty toward those he considered beneath him, and a disturbing tendency to blur the lines between performance and reality. From their first scene together, Goldie sensed something unsettling about Sellers' attention. His compliments carried an undercurrent of possession, as if her Oscar success had somehow made her available to him. The way he looked at her had nothing to do with professional assessment and everything to do with predatory calculation. The British press was fascinated by their pairing, arranging photo shoots and interviews that played up the romantic comedy angle. Sellers performed the part of the gracious veteran guiding a young actress. But away from cameras, his behavior became increasingly inappropriate. He would stand too close during rehearsals, let his hands linger during scenes requiring physical contact, and make comments about her appearance that crossed professional boundaries. What started as boundary violations escalated into outright pursuit. Sellers began suggesting private dinners and intimate script sessions, claiming they needed to develop their romantic chemistry for the camera. His persistence had the calculated quality of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted through sheer force of celebrity. The breaking point came during a production break when Sellers cornered Goldie in her dressing room. Away from the protection of crew members and cameras, his mask of professional courtesy dropped entirely. What he proposed wasn't romance or even attraction. It was a business arrangement disguised as marriage. Sellers painted a picture of a power couple combining his established comedy legacy with her rising star power. The proposal came with the implicit suggestion that her continued success in British film depended on having the right partner. It was manipulation dressed up as opportunity, career advancement offered in exchange for personal submission. When Goldie politely declined, Sellers' reaction revealed the entitled rage simmering beneath his public persona. The charming English gentleman disappeared, replaced by a man who couldn't accept that his fame and talent didn't guarantee him access to whatever he wanted. His rejection didn't manifest as explosive anger. It was something far more calculated and cruel. Sellers deployed his professional authority as a weapon. He began questioning Goldie's performance choices in front of cast and crew, suggesting she wasn't understanding her character's sophistication. He would stop takes to offer helpful direction that was actually thinly veiled criticism designed to undermine her confidence and establish his dominance. The remaining weeks of filming became psychological torture. Sellers used his veteran status in the British setting to position himself as the authority on comedy, suggesting that Goldie's American sensibilities were too broad for the sophisticated humor they were creating. Every scene became a power struggle disguised as artistic collaboration. Critics would later note the complete lack of chemistry between the leads, but they couldn't capture the hostile undercurrent that poisoned every moment they shared on screen. What audiences saw wasn't poor acting, but the result of a professional relationship corrupted by rejected pursuit and wounded male ego. The film was completed and released to modest success before being quickly forgotten. But the experience taught Goldie crucial lessons about the price of success for women in Hollywood. Male colleagues could interpret professional courtesy as romantic invitation. Rejection could transform collaborators into enemies. And sometimes the most dangerous predators were the ones who hid their entitlement behind artistic genius. Peter Sellers never forgave Goldie for refusing to play the role he had scripted for her in his personal fantasy. For her part, she never forgave him for trying to leverage professional opportunity into sexual conquest. The man who could disappear into any character couldn't hide his true nature when faced with a woman who wouldn't be purchased with career promises. Peter Sellers had shown Goldie how quickly a professional relationship could turn predatory, but those wounds, however deep, eventually healed with time and distance. The betrayals that would cut deepest came from the men who promised to love her forever, then spent decades trying to destroy her when forever came to an end. The divorce papers couldn't capture the real story. Legal documents spoke of irreconcilable differences and asset division, but they missed the years of manipulation that would follow. For Gus Triconis and Bill Hudson, divorce wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of decades-long campaigns to rewrite history and destroy the woman who had dared to outgrow them. Gus Triconis had been Goldie's first real love, a dancer and choreographer who swept her off her feet in the late 1960s. Their marriage began with shared artistic dreams, two performers who understood the demands of entertainment. But success changes everything, and Gus couldn't handle watching his young wife star eclipse his struggling career. When they married in 1969, Goldie was still the giggly blonde from Laugh-In, beloved but not yet taken seriously. By the early 1970s, she was an Oscar winner fielding offers from major studios. Gus, meanwhile, was fighting for small directing jobs and choreography work, constantly introduced as Goldie Hawn's husband, rather than recognized for his own talents. The resentment built slowly but poisonously. Gus began making subtle comments about Goldie's success being based on luck rather than talent. He questioned her career choices, suggesting that serious actresses didn't take certain roles. The supportive husband gradually transformed into a critic who used intimate knowledge of her insecurities as ammunition. But the real venom emerged after their 1976 divorce. Gus discovered that the media was hungry for inside dirt on America's sweetheart, and he was perfectly positioned to provide it. His interviews painted Goldie as a woman corrupted by fame, abandoning the values and people who had supported her rise to stardom. His comments were deliberately vague, allowing readers' imaginations to fill in scandalous details. He linked her to affairs with high-profile stars, turning her professional networking into evidence of moral corruption. Every interview became an opportunity to suggest that fame had transformed his ex-wife into someone unrecognizable, selfish, manipulative, and promiscuous. The character assassination was cruel and calculated. Gus understood exactly which buttons to press to damage Goldie's image as America's sweetheart. He positioned himself as the loyal husband who had been abandoned when success went to her head, the good man whose only crime was loving someone who couldn't handle fame responsibly. But if Gus's campaign was bitter, Bill Hudson's revenge would prove absolutely devastating. Their marriage from 1976 to 1982 had produced children Kate and Oliver, giving Bill permanent leverage in Goldie's life. Unlike Gus, whose bitterness could be dismissed as the ramblings of a forgotten ex-husband, Bill's accusations carried the authority of a father. Hudson crafted a narrative painting Goldie as a woman who pursued an open marriage while he remained faithful and devoted. He positioned himself as the traditional family man who wanted nothing more than conventional domestic life, only to be betrayed by a woman who couldn't abandon her Hollywood lifestyle for family responsibility. His version of their relationship became increasingly elaborate and damaging. He claimed to have been the devoted husband whose only desire was a stable home for their children, while Goldie was portrayed as someone who prioritized career and freedom over family obligations. The attacks escalated after their divorce was finalized, and Goldie's relationship with Kurt Russell deepened. Bill felt marginalized from his children's lives and channeled that resentment into a sustained campaign of public humiliation that would continue for decades. His most devastating assault came in later interviews, where he abandoned any pretense of dignified restraint. He called her manipulative, cruel, and selfish, painting her success as evidence of moral corruption rather than talent and hard work. These weren't the heated words of a recent breakup. This was calculated character assassination designed to destroy her public image. Both men used their roles as former husbands to legitimize their attacks. They transformed themselves from failed partners into victims of a manipulative woman who had used and discarded them. They painted Goldie's professional success as personal betrayal, her happiness as evidence of their own victimization. For Goldie, the sustained campaigns forced her to develop thicker skin and better boundaries. She learned to protect her private life more carefully and choose partners with greater wisdom. But the betrayal cut deeper than the failed marriages themselves. These were men who had shared her most vulnerable moments, who had claimed to love her unconditionally, who had sworn to protect and cherish her. Instead, they chose to weaponize their intimate knowledge of her fears and insecurities in public relations wars that would span decades. The lesson was brutal but clear. In Hollywood, even love could become ammunition, and the people closest to you might ultimately prove to be your most dangerous enemies. The ex-husbands had taught Goldie that even love could be weaponized, that the people closest to you could become your most vicious enemies. But their cruelty was born from failed relationships and wounded pride. The attack that nearly destroyed her before her career even began came from a monster who preyed on young women's dreams, a predator who used America's love for his art as a hunting license. 19-year-old Goldie Hawn stepped off the train in New York City with dreams bigger than her small-town Maryland upbringing and a dangerous naivety about how the entertainment industry really worked. The audition call had seemed like divine intervention, a chance to move beyond go-go dancing toward legitimate acting opportunities. Instead, she was walking straight into a predator's carefully laid trap. Al Cap was American royalty in the 1960s, the creative genius behind Lil Abner, the beloved comic strip that had spawned Broadway shows, Hollywood movies, and merchandising empires. His satirical characters populated American culture, and Cap himself was treated as a cultural commentator whose opinions on politics and society carried real weight. He was exactly the kind of powerful man a young actress would be thrilled to meet. But behind the public persona of America's favorite cartoonist lurked something monstrous. Cap had developed a systematic approach to exploiting young women seeking entertainment careers, using his fame and cultural influence to create opportunities for abuse. The audition offer that brought Goldie to his Park Avenue apartment was part of a predatory system he had perfected over years of victimizing aspiring actresses. The apartment was designed to impress and intimidate. Expensive art, luxurious furnishings, all the trappings of success that reinforced Cap's position as a cultural powerhouse. But Goldie's instincts began warning her something was wrong the moment she walked through the door. There was no script waiting, no other industry professionals, no equipment that might suggest a legitimate audition process. Cap's demeanor was wrong from the start. His smile had a predatory quality that made her skin crawl, and he assessed her with the calculating gaze of a man who saw young women as objects for his personal consumption. When he suggested she make herself comfortable while he changed into something more appropriate, every alarm bell in her head started ringing. He returned wearing only a silk dressing gown, and Goldie's worst fears were confirmed. This wasn't an audition. It was a setup designed to place a vulnerable young woman in a compromising position with a powerful man who expected compliance in exchange for career opportunities. The American icon was a predator who used his cultural status as a hunting license. The manipulation was sophisticated and terrifying. Cap began with actual script reading, demonstrating enough professional knowledge to suggest that real opportunities might be available. He offered acting notes that revealed genuine understanding of performance, making Goldie wonder if perhaps she had misjudged the situation. But the facade crumbled quickly. Cap began making increasingly inappropriate requests, asking her to lift her dress, suggesting poses that would display her body more effectively. Each demand was presented as a professional requirement, the kind of evaluation any serious actress would need to undergo. When Goldie expressed discomfort and tried to redirect toward actual script work, Cap's mask dropped completely. He made his expectations brutally clear. clients in exchange for career advancement. The man who created wholesome comic characters revealed himself as someone who viewed young women as commodities to be consumed. The assault was both physical and psychological. When she refused his demands, Cap exposed himself, using his body as a weapon of humiliation and intimidation. The message was unmistakable. He had power over her career prospects, and resistance would be met with degradation and destroyed dreams. The final cruelty came as Goldie fled his apartment. Cap delivered his parting shot with calculated viciousness, telling her she would never amount to anything and should abandon her dreams for conventional domestic life. The words were designed to destroy her aspirations as effectively as the assault had violated her dignity. The attack left Goldie emotionally shattered and practically stranded. She was alone in New York with no money for transportation home, forced to accept from her abuser just to escape his presence. The humiliation was complete, sexually, professionally destroyed, then forced to accept charity from the man who had victimized her. For years, Goldie carried the trauma in silence. Speaking out against powerful men was career in the 1960s, and victims were typically blamed rather than supported. She learned to navigate Hollywood with heightened awareness of predatory behavior, developing survival instincts that would protect her from future attacks. But the experience also became fuel for her determination. Every achievement became a response to Cap's prediction of failure. When she won her Oscar in 1970, she reportedly sent him a letter with a simple message. She hadn't needed to settle for the life he'd prescribed. The letter wasn't just revenge, it was proof that like Al Cap couldn't destroy women's dreams through intimidation and assault. But forgiveness was never an option. The man who had tried to trade career advancement for had revealed Hollywood's ugliest truth, that women's bodies were considered part of the price of admission to success. Al Cap had tried to break Goldie before she even became a star, using raw predatory power to crush her dreams. But she survived, thrived, and proved him wrong. By the 1990s, she was Hollywood royalty who should have been untouchable. Yet even at the height of her power, she discovered that some men's egos were so fragile that they couldn't handle sharing the spotlight, even when millions of dollars were at stake. Bird on a Wire should have been pure box office magic. Take Hollywood's hottest action star, pair him with America's comedy sweetheart, add some spectacular stunts and romantic chemistry, and watch the money roll in. Instead, the 1990 production became a grueling 4-month battle that exposed the toxic masculinity lurking beneath Hollywood's glossy surface. Mel Gibson arrived on set at the peak of his powers. Mad Max and Lethal Weapon had established him as the thinking woman's action hero. Tough but vulnerable, dangerous but charming. He was box office gold, the kind of star who could open a movie on charisma alone. But success had also fed an ego that demanded complete control of every production. His previous films had been testosterone-fueled fantasies where women existed primarily as victims to rescue or prizes to win. Now he was expected to share equal screen time with an actress who had her own ideas about character development and comedic timing. The culture clash was immediate and brutal. Goldie had specifically requested script changes that would give her character, lawyer Marianne Graves, more intelligence and agency. She wasn't interested in playing another screaming damsel in distress. Her career had evolved beyond such limitations. But Gibson and the male-dominated production team seemed genuinely confused by her demands for meaningful dialogue and character development. From day one, Gibson treated the film as his personal showcase, with everyone else serving as supporting players in the Mel Gibson action spectacular. During rehearsals, he monopolized discussions about blocking and motivation while dismissing Goldie's suggestions as unnecessary complications that would slow down the pace. His attitude revealed a man who viewed her presence as a contractual obligation rather than creative collaboration. In his world, action heroes drove the story, while female co-stars provided decoration and motivation. The concept of equal partnership seemed foreign and threatening to his established worldview. The tension escalated during their action sequences. Gibson insisted on increasingly dangerous stunts, partly to maintain his action hero credibility and partly to demonstrate his superior commitment to the production. When Goldie expressed concerns about safety protocols, he dismissed her worries as typical female anxiety about physical challenges. But the real conflict emerged around their comedic scenes. Comedy requires precise timing and collaborative give and take between performers. Gibson, however, was accustomed to action films where his charisma could carry scenes regardless of other actors' contributions. He delivered his lines with action hero intensity, then seemed frustrated when Goldie's nuanced comedic approach didn't match his energy. Director John Badham found himself caught between two strong personalities with completely different working philosophies. Gibson expected to be the center of attention in every scene, while Goldie demanded equal creative input on their shared moments. The compromise satisfied neither star and created an atmosphere of barely controlled hostility. Gibson's insecurity revealed itself most clearly in their romantic scenes. His approach to screen romance was as aggressive as his action persona, all intensity and physical dominance with little subtlety or emotional vulnerability. But romantic comedy requires the kind of openness and emotional availability that Gibson seemed incapable of accessing. When Goldie tried to guide their scenes toward more believable emotional territory, Gibson interpreted her direction as criticism of his performance. His defensive reaction revealed a man whose confidence was built on maintaining absolute control rather than genuine artistic collaboration. The promotional tour became another battleground. Gibson would arrive at interviews unprepared to discuss character dynamics or romantic elements, leaving Goldie to carry the conversational load while he retreated into monosyllabic action hero responses. His discomfort with sharing the spotlight was obvious to everyone present. Critics noticed the lack of chemistry between the leads, describing their pairing as problematic and noting that they never generated the sparks necessary for romantic comedy. But they couldn't fully capture the hostile undercurrent that poisoned every scene they shared. For Goldie, the experience was a masterclass in how Hollywood's action hero culture could corrupt potentially talented actors. Gibson's inability to share creative space or treat female colleagues as equals revealed an insecurity that his tough guy image was designed to hide. The film achieved modest box office success, but both stars emerged from the production damaged and eager to move on. Years later, when Gibson's personal troubles became public knowledge, Goldie felt vindicated in her assessment of his character. The man who couldn't share screen time with a female co-star would eventually reveal problems with women that extended far beyond professional settings. The experience reinforced her appreciation for partners like Kurt Russell, who understood that great screen chemistry comes from mutual respect and genuine collaboration rather than domination and control. Some leading men were secure enough to let their co-stars shine alongside them. Despite all his success and charisma, Mel Gibson wasn't one of them. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.